Welcome back to the show. Glad you're with us here. Larry, Mike, and Brad, joined by right now. He is the managing editor of duckswire.com. Also, he does the BLEAV in Oregon podcast. Zach Neal joining us right now to talk more about this, the marquee matchup, not only for this weekend, but possibly for the entire month of October. Number 2, Ohio State traveling out to number 3, Oregon. Both teams 5-0 overall. Both teams undefeated in conference as well. Zach, welcome to Big Sports Radio. We were talking here in the break before we started that we've all had this game marked on our calendars. Like the moment that the schedule came out, we're like, yeah, that's the game we want to see.
Yeah, I mean, this is, biggest game for I think either team on the schedule. One of the biggest games, the Big Ten, one of the biggest games in the college football nation this year. Like you said, these teams are at the top of the nation. Top five matchup, first ever top five matchup held inside Autzen Stadium. So it's gonna be a lot of fun.
One of the things I look at when I see these two teams matched up is I look at the template that Michigan's put together, which is if you can beat or beat up Ohio State on the lines, you can win the game. Is Oregon capable of doing that?
I think that's something that Oregon fans would like to see. We have not seen it in the past because, I mean, this is a former Pac-12 style team that was kind of run and gun offense. And they weren't built like an SEC or a Big Ten team in the trenches, but Dan Lanning has been trying to change that since he came over in 2021. I think he's done a very good job of that. You look at the offensive line, the defensive line, they are much bigger, just physically, stature-wise, they're much deeper than they used to be. Oregon's defensive line is one of the best in the nation right now. They're having a ton of success. So, granted, you have to look at who they've played. They haven't really been tested by anyone close to Ohio State's stature, of course. But, I think that it will be a very good test for them. I would not be surprised if Oregon's defensive line did stand up because, they've been impressing so far this year.
I think that also an Oregon win solidifies them as a true Big Ten power. I think when we talked about the 4 teams coming over, obviously Oregon's success, we know what they've done. But at the same time, like you said, that's Pac-12. And we've talked before about teams on the West Coast in recent years. You've got to fight harder for attention because the East Coast just isn't paying attention like we did 20 years ago. Talk about what this would mean for the program if they get this win on national TV. It's this Saturday night game on NBC.
Yeah, it would just establish themselves as a national power, which is what they've been trying to do for the past couple of decades, honestly. But under Chip Kelly and under Mark Helfrich and Mario Cristobal, I mean, they've viewed themselves as a national power for a long time. And now you move to the Big Ten, you're on that bigger stage, but you said getting a win like this would be, massive for the team because it just kind of solidifies what you've done that has been working, and recruiting at a national level is working, and the coaching change with Dan Lanning coming in worked. This is the pinnacle of success if they get up to there and they can really compete for a national championship if they beat Ohio State and kind of prove that they're at that level. So it'll be a really big test for that, but a lot of good things can come.
With that coaching change, what does Dan Lanning bring to the table and do better than Mario Cristobal that has made this difference in the elevation of Oregon football?
One thing, I mean, so the same thing that Mario Cristobal was, he's a really good recruiter, which Cristobal obviously was at Oregon, is doing the same at Miami as well. I think one thing that Oregon fans enjoy about Dan Lanning that Mario Cristobal didn't do is he's more of a hands-off head coach, where Mario Cristobal might have micromanaged a little bit in the offense and had, whatever offensive coordinator he had could have been prolific, but he wanted to micromanage them and make them run the ball a little bit more his style, which we've seen in Miami a little bit as well. Dan Lanning is more of a general manager of a head coach, and he lets his offensive coordinator run whatever scheme he wants to. He's got his hands on the defense. We also love that there's a defensive head coach in Eugene because that's not something you've seen for a long time. But I think he's just really good at operating his program and kind of being the general manager of everything.
And to that is we're talking with Zach Neal, talking Oregon, taking on Ohio State this weekend. Zach, of course, does a number of things with the Ducks, managing editor again, duckswire.com, also the BLEAV in Oregon podcast. To that point, I've been really impressed at how seamlessly the transition has gone this year from Bo Nix, who had the successful career at Auburn. He was fell out of favor there and was no longer going to be the starter each week. And he goes to Oregon, has a fantastic career, end of his career there. In steps in Dylan Gabriel. And I saw at one point, I think it was maybe a couple of weeks ago, that his completion percentage was like 80% or something. I mean, it's just, they're like video game numbers out there.
Yeah, it's really impressive, and credit to the offensive scheme for kind of giving them a platform and allowing them to operate in that system. Bo Nix, very talented quarterback. Dylan Gabriel, very talented quarterback. And the thing about both of them is that they're incredibly experienced. I mean, Bo Nix broke the record for most collegiate starts, and Dylan Gabriel is likely going to break that record this year at Oregon. So, they operate in the system really well. Credit to Will Stein, the offensive coordinator. He sets them up to succeed. And when you have as much talent as Oregon does on the field, you don't have to do a whole lot as the quarterback. You kind of have to be a B plus quarterback in order to succeed instead of an A plus quarterback, because all you got to do is get the ball in the hands of your playmakers and let them go.
With that, speaking of playmakers, Ohio State's offense is just loaded with playmakers and guys who are going to be playing on Sunday. What is Oregon going to do, particularly to deal with those wide receivers?
Man, that's a good question. I wish I knew the answer. Ohio State, yeah, you said it. They are so impressive. Just every position you look, running back is impressive, quarterback's good. The wide receivers, Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, are just incredible. They've got a really good offensive line. I don't know how you're going to manage all of those things and not let someone beat you on any given play. That's going to be very tough. But if I did know, I don't think I would be here talking to you guys. I think I'd be getting paid a lot more money somewhere else.
Would it be nice, right? Because
It would be nice.
Yeah, it's $1 million these days. Just be had that kind of knowledge, and there's no question. I want to talk a little bit about overall the switch to the Big Ten. I mean, the official move was July 1st. In Oregon's case, roughly a year in preparation. Unlike USC and UCLA, they had a couple of years. What's been the feeling there in Eugene with the switch, and even among the fans, among the players, even the media? What's the vibe been like coming over to the Big Ten?
They're excited. Absolutely. I mean, I feel like this program was ready for a move up. There was some frustration with the Pac-12, not just among Oregon fans, but a lot of the former Pac-12 teams that that conference wasn't really doing them justice for what they had on the field. So they're excited that the Big Ten is really propping them up, putting them on that national stage that we've been talking about. It'll be interesting to see what it's like once we get out of football season and kind of into basketball season and other sports, because, we talked a little bit before the show started that, this is great for football, but I'm curious to see how other teams and other sports adapt to it as well. So right now, everyone's really excited. They're, chomping at the bit to play some of these Big Ten teams and get into this later into this conference schedule.
Does Chip Kelly on the other sideline, does that add any spice to this? I know that's a while back, but certainly you could argue that he might be the best offensive coordinator in college football.
It absolutely does. I mean, Oregon fans and people in Eugene still love Chip Kelly. I mean, he is kind of, the way that he left Eugene wasn't the best just because he went to go take another job in the NFL. And I think that right at kind of the pinnacle of this team too, they went to the national championship the year after that. So, or not long after that, sorry, excuse me. So I think there's still a lot of love for Oregon fans. Of course, they still want to beat him. But I know that when Ohio State made that move and brought in Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator, a lot of Duck fans were like, oh, okay, that's dangerous, because they know how good he is on the offensive side of the ball. And when you get him in a position where he's just coaching the offense and he doesn't have to deal with all of the head coach stuff and worrying about a defense and recruiting and all these other things, that's when it gets scary, because he is as good as anyone in the world when it comes to X's and O's.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Want to get your thoughts on, let's just, talk about the outcome on Saturday. What does Oregon have to do to get this win?
They got to play some really clean football. They have to play consistent football. What we've seen so far this year is that, 90% of the time Oregon plays as well as anyone in the nation, but there's about 10% of the time, whether it's, penalties on the offense or defense, or Dylan Gabriel throwing red zone interceptions or stuff like that, they just kind of get out of sync for little bits of time. So far from what we've seen, I think that you can get away with that against teams like Michigan State and Idaho and UCLA. I don't think you can get away with 2 red zone interceptions against Ohio State and I still expect to win. So, it's still relatively early in the season, so you're ironing out this stuff, but they just really need a clean game in order to be able to hang in this one.
If this is a high-scoring game, does that favor Oregon or Ohio State? And what do you think on the other end? Does that mean a low scoring game gives one team the advantage?
It's really interesting because I don't think one way gives either side a big advantage. I think that Oregon can score with the best of them. I think Ohio State can score with the best of them. Of course, both teams have really good defenses too, so I'm sure that both teams would love to kind of get this down and dirty in the trenches. I would like to say that Oregon could win a shootout better just because they're kind of more used to that style of play just from their track record over the years. Whereas Ohio State knows what it's like to be in a Big Ten shootout that's 17-10 going into the fourth quarter, or a Big Ten brawl, you know what I mean, not a shootout.
Yep.
So it'll be
That's a
interesting to
shootout.
see. Yeah, maybe an Iowa shootout, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it'll be interesting to see,
digits, yeah.
but I don't know. I think that either team really, neither one of those gives either one an advantage.
Yeah, it's so big, and I think either one losing doesn't hurt them in the big picture in terms of college football playoff because of the stature of this. But it's funny, everyone's worried about you don't want to have that second loss, and so certainly the loser, not that their backs are against the wall, but I think there's more pressure the rest of the way to make sure you get those other wins. Zach, it's been great talking with you and all the updates on what's going on out there and looking ahead to this game. You'll have the best seat in the house. We'll be watching on TV, but we know that we are envious that you are right there at Autzen Stadium to watch this one. Thanks for your time and enjoy on Saturday.
Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, you got it. Appreciate it. Zach Neel, once again, he is the managing editor of DucksWire.com, also does the BLEAV on Oregon podcast, and just some great insights. Again, it's Ohio State number 2 at number 3 Oregon. Clash of 5-0 teams. Buckeyes a slight favorite in this one. 7:30 Eastern time on NBC. We've got more to come right here. This is Big Sports Radio.
This is the run my own business dream. This is the colleges paid for dream. This is the retire early dream. This is Busey, where your dreams and possibilities become moments through trusted guidance and expertise, through lifelong relationships. Because we're here to help you achieve the life you've always envisioned.
This is Mike Kegley with Larry Smith, Brad Sturdy. We have Kevin Noon on from Buckeye Huddle, and you guys knew he was going to be on because we were going to be talking Buckeyes with what is, in my opinion, to date, the biggest game of the college football regular season is the Ohio State Buckeyes visiting the Oregon Ducks. Kevin, am I wrong on that?
Obviously, Georgia, Alabama was a big game. I guess that was 2 versus 4. This is 2 versus 3. We know the human polls don't really mean a whole lot, but I mean, obviously, this game is for superiority in the Big Ten. I mean, obviously, there have been some good stories out there. Indiana's undefeated. Penn State is still, up there. But Ohio State, Oregon is the game that we've been all looking forward to. I think that there are a lot of people who believe that this could be a rematch in Indianapolis as well. Maybe even played again in the playoff. You don't know, but it's going to be strength versus strength in this game, and it is a makeup date in some ways of a game that was supposed to take place in 2020. We all know what happened at that point. That game did not happen, but really looking forward to getting out and covering this one.
Yeah, this is exciting. Matt Stevens of the Illini guys predicted very early on that he thought this would be a 3-game series this season. And boy, that would be a new one. Now we're in NFL territory. So I'm going to ask you a question, one that you may not agree with the logic, but I'll still throw it out there anyway. Michigan has beaten Ohio State 3 years in a row, largely by being able to control the line play during those games. I'm looking at the rosters. Is there any way that Oregon can try to use the Michigan script, or is Ohio State just too good this year?
I think that Oregon's defensive line is really, really good, but I think this is the best version of the Ohio State offensive line that we've seen in a few years. So on that, in that direction, I don't know. I mean, I think that they could try to speed up Will Howard, take away more complex routes, things of that nature, force him to kind of dink and dunk a little bit more. But I think that plays more into Will Howard's strength in terms of the shorter routes. I mean, yeah, it's great to have Jeremiah Smith go run really fast and just throw it there and have him run under it and probably catch it one-handed. On the other side, I think you get away from Oregon's strength if you try to play bully ball on offense for them, because I mean they do have a good running back in Jordan James, but you have a super senior coming back in Dylan Gabriel. You got Tez Johnson, you got Evan Stewart, you've got Terrence Ferguson, the tight end. I'm going out and trying to play my own game at that point. I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. I'm the number 3 team in the nation for a reason. I'm playing at home. I don't necessarily kind of get away and use what maybe others have used to beat Ohio State. Let's remember Missouri beat Ohio State. I mean, but that also was with Kyle McCord transferring out and leaving Ohio State kind of high and dry at the quarterback position. So I understand the logic of what you're saying, but I think that Oregon is just too good to kind of get away from its identity. That was Michigan's identity. I
Right.
don't think a really good team needs to try and become Michigan to win this game.
I look at the wide receiver position, and Marvin Harrison Jr. I thought that was about as good as you got in college. And then we find Jeremiah Smith comes along as a freshman. What kind of mojo does Ohio State have in recruiting unbelievable guys to wide receiver? And it scares me as what could be next as we see this progression.
2 words, Brian Hartline. I mean, Brian Hartline is a tremendous recruiter. There's a reason why a lot of schools mention Brian Hartline on their short list of potential coaches. I mean, Brian Hartline has not been coaching all that long. Brian Hartline made money in the NFL, so he's not necessarily trying to, set up, his kids with money at this point. I mean, could he end up leaving at some point? I mean, I'm sure that there will be an offer at some point that might be difficult. Just think about this. Ohio State already has a commitment from Chris Henry Jr., who is another 6'5" guy who can fly. I mean, he may not be nearly as polished yet as Jeremiah was. Jeremiah is an alien. I mean,
Yeah.
he's just that different. But I mean, Ohio State just recruits really well at the receiver position every year. I go back to their 22 class, which was filled with 4-stars, and 3 of the 4 players I think have already transferred out of the program. The 4th one's still there and is probably the number 6 or number 7 receiver on the depth chart. So Ohio State certainly has figured out how to recruit receivers. Is still a hot school there. I mean, I think here in this upcoming class of 25, maybe not as deep as some other years, but something's got to give at some point, because you can only, I mean, Ohio State doesn't play a lot of 4 receiver sets.
Right.
So, I mean, you're only going to get to play so much, but I mean, it'll fire back up again in 26 with Chris Henry Jr.
How does Oregon try to slow down this receiving core? Because it is as formidable as some NFL receiving cores.
I think I think they've got to speed up Will Howard. I think they've got to get pressure on Will Howard. I mean, Oregon has a really talented secondary, but it is kind of a mercenary secondary. They went to the portal and picked up a lot of guys. So they have guys who are long on experience, but maybe a little short on playing together as a unit. But a lot of times, as we know with receiver, it's a case of it's a one-on-one battle in a lot of ways. So I think that getting to Will Howard, not allowing them to run deeper, more complex routes is important, and hit him a couple times and make him think twice about some things. Are all the things there? Because I don't think you're going to really win a lot of single coverage things on Jeremiah Smith. You're going to have to bracket him, but if you bracket him, what does that mean for Emeka Egbuka? What does that mean for Carnell Tate? Ohio State just has waves after waves after waves.
Yeah, it's a daunting task. And you put the offense in the control of arguably the best offensive coordinator in the country. What does Chip Kelly mean to this game? And do you think it has any extra emotion for him? He's going back to a place that they idolize him because he basically elevated that Oregon program. What effect will he have on the game?
I think he'll have a big effect. I think where he makes a big impact is he still in his offense has a lot more run fits and things along those lines. And I think that that's important because we watched under Ryan Day, the play calling head coach. A lot of times Ohio State couldn't convert third and short, fourth and short, and they're throwing. I mean, now, with Quinshon Judkins and obviously with Trevion Henderson, they are a fantastic short yardage team. Ohio State is 21 of 21 scoring in the red zone with 20 touchdowns. So I think a lot of that can be attributed to Chip Kelly. It is going to be an important game for Chip Kelly. He admitted that he has family still in the Eugene area, but it's just another game. You're going to get a chance to kind of hang out with your family briefly, some coaches that he's worked with, but then it's the business at hand, and you've got to sit there and take care of it. So his impact is just it's hard to measure.
Yeah. What do you think in terms of Oregon's going to bring that offense out? What is Ohio State going to try to do to shut them down defensively?
I think, it's a lot of the same things. Ohio State needs to speed Dylan Gabriel up. Michigan State did a good job of that, and he threw 2 picks, like 2 red zone picks. So you do some things like that. I think you try to take away the run, and a lot of times you're like, oh, we'll take away the run and force them to beat us in the air. Well, Oregon can beat you in the air. So, I mean, you gotta be able to do a lot of things like that. But Ohio State, I mean, they claim they have BIA, best in America, for its secondary, and they played very well. So I don't think you can necessarily put everybody out there on an island. I think the biggest challenge is going to be Terrence Ferguson. He is a big, talented tight end, and I used to say for years and years, Ohio State struggled against those types of tight ends, and they didn't really face any.
Right.
Now they're facing one, and this guy's a problem. So he's somebody that I'm looking to have a big game.
Do you think the team that actually runs the ball most effectively may be the team that wins it? How do you see this game going if it was Kevin Noon looking into your crystal ball?
I do think there's something to that. I'm not going to go to the level of saying, oh, you want to keep the other offense on the sideline, but there is something to that. I think being able to control the ground game is going to be very important for whoever is going to come out and win this game. Who has more, yards per attempt. I think all of that is going to be really important in determining this game. And I just think that it's going to be a matter of playing a clean game. Don't turn it over. I mean, if somebody's -2 in this game in the turnover margin, I think it's going to be really hard to overcome. But I think the team that runs the ball the best certainly has the best opportunity, barring some sort of places that, go a little nuts on us.
Now, you're a connoisseur of fine food. Do you have any place that you've got circled there in Oregon, any restaurant that you're going to hit? Because this is a new thing for Big Ten guys to get out into Oregon.
Yeah, it's still a little new for me. I know there's a Voodoo Donuts in Eugene. Voodoo Donuts was made popular in Portland. There's Tracktown Pizza that's out there that's really famous. Remember just the track heritage at the University of Oregon with Nike's proximity to Eugene, being out there in Beaverton. I'm still working on a couple places at this point, but I do see some Voodoo Donuts, and I do see myself just north of Salem. There is an In-N-Out Burger, and I'm going to go there and knock out a 6x6. Just not because I need to, but because my fans expect it.
Because you can.
Yes.
I've been to Voodoo Donuts, and Voodoo Donuts is very good. It's a really tasty donut shop. I think it's going to be a fantastic game of the year. Of course, folks, if you like what you heard, Kevin Noon, you can go to Buckeye Huddle. He's the resident heartthrob of Buckeye Huddle, according to the Twitter. So I'm going to go with that. I've got a lot of friends who follow Ohio State, and they all are members of Buckeye Huddle. That's why we have him on the show. Thanks, Kevin. And folks, we will be right back after these messages.
Red Grange wasn't just a football player, he was a legend. Discover the untold story of Illini great Red Grange in a new novel by Doug Vilhard called The Golden Age of Red. This captivating book takes you back to the 1920s when a humble young Illinois player transformed into the galloping ghost and electrified the nation. Get your copy of The Golden Age of Red by Doug Vilhard today. Available on Amazon and wherever books are sold.